Europe has its European Court of Human Rights, its European Convention on Human Rights, and it's beginning to come under challenge. Oh, no, not from this country, goodness gracious me, no. But it was interesting that in Germany, where we really have seen some very violent scenes on the streets, a Star of David being painted, spray-painted on houses where Jews live, and many other extraordinary and awful things, petrol bombs at synagogues, and all of this in the country that said in 1945, never again. As I reported last night, the German Chancellor, in Der Spiegel, said we're going to have to start deportations. But what really caught my eye today was the French Interior Minister, and his name is Gerald Darmanin, and he has said France will deport foreigners deemed a threat without waiting for the European Court of Human Rights to hear their appeal. Well, this is really, really interesting indeed. I wonder, Martin Howe KC, as somebody that specialises in EU law at all levels, could the French simply just defy this court in their own country of Strasbourg, or is this just political sort of baton waving?
I don't know how serious it is, but knowing the French, they probably will go through with it because they have a history of being rather more robust with these international courts than we are. And it's the same thing as when we were in the EU, where, you know, various countries were getting away, including the French, with not implementing common EU rules. And of course, Muggins in this country obeyed everything to the letter.
Yeah, I can see the parallels, very clearly see the parallels. But what, I mean, if a state like France was to breach, you know, some fundamental principles of the ECHR, of that convention, and there was a judgment in Strasbourg again, what would happen? I mean, they'd simply get fined, would they, as a government?
Well, at the end of the day, there's just a big row in the Council of Europe. I mean, you know, when Russia was a member, Putin regularly got hauled over the coals, and nothing persuaded him to obey any judgments of the European Court of Human Rights. So at the end of the day, it's pretty toothless.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because here it would appear that Westminster is terrified of it. I mean, here we're waiting for the Supreme Court judgment on Rwanda, and, you know, maybe the judges will, you know, bring in the convention in that against the government, and even if the government wins, they can still get taken to Strasbourg. And you mentioned this point about, you know, EU membership. We are naturally, are we not, a country that if we want to be part of a club, we believe we pay the membership fee and we kind of obey the rules. Because there are some, Martin Howe, suggesting that maybe we could be a bit more like Gerald Darmanin, that we could just say, the hell with it, we're just going to do what we want. But we never do we?
We don't, and I think it's not necessarily a good idea for us to change to not obeying laws or not obeying international treaties. But I think what we need to do is be rather more careful about what we sign up to. And the problem with the European Convention on Human Rights, it's not so much the convention as it was drafted originally, which is unobjectionable and gained widespread support across the political spectrum. Yeah. It's 50 years of judgments by the Strasbourg Court that have changed it.
And judicial activism.
Judicial activism. And indeed, this whole business of it acting against deportations was an invention of the Strasbourg Court. It was never intended to be an asylum convention. It was, in fact, negotiated in parallel with the Geneva Asylum Convention.
Because we're always told by the Labour Party, well, hang on, it was British lawyers that drafted it. We should be very proud of it. But the point you're making is it's a very different animal.
It's an extremely different animal from the animal that was drafted. And at the end of the day, the big question is, you know, why do we need to belong to it anymore as a country?
Well, you see, I get this sense that and we're going to be out on the road. This show's going to be in Cardiff tomorrow and in St Austell in Cornwall on Thursday. And it's just so interesting to get outside London and talk to folk. And they can't understand why, if we voted Brexit, there's still this sort of foreign court that they don't fully understand. There's no reason why they should. Is this going to become an election issue, in your opinion?
I think it's bound to. I mean, the immediate issue, of course, is the boat people and the Rwanda issue. But that's only one of the many things which the European Convention has caused problems on. Ben Wallace, the outgoing Defence Secretary, made the point that it interferes severely with military operations abroad. The convention was never intended to apply extraterritorially. That's a pure invention of the Strasbourg court.
So it's time to leave, is it, Martin Howe?
Well, my view is it's time to leave. In fact, 10 years ago, I was on a commission on the Bill of Rights set up by the Cameron government, coalition government. And we were looking at ways of sort of modifying its application and things. But I think we've gone past that sort of approach. And really, that there is no purpose for this country to remain in it. Why should we have a sort of regional court?
But we'll become like Belarus and Russia, they'll say. Well, because they're not part of it.
Well, they decide. They decided to leave for very different reasons. The reason for leaving would be it's impossible, unfortunately, to stay in the convention and not be bound by the court. The court is
because of our culture,
and because of our culture, we don't want to belong to clubs and then not obey the rules, as you put it. And if the rules are not acceptable, and I think they aren't, then we should leave. And then I come back to the real point. What is the benefit to us in staying? I've no idea. It's just waving arms around and saying, we'll be regarded as bad people.
I think The Guardian would tell us it's protecting us against bad, evil governments, but I don't think our governments, they may make mistakes, but I doubt they're bad or evil.
Well, we're a democratic system, and at the end of the day, the electorate punish dictatorial governments.
Really interesting. Martin Howe, thank you very much indeed for coming on. I think this will become a very major national debate.